Hi, I'm Brandon Carey, and today I want to give you a method of success in general terms that is a three-step process. And I want to tell you a little bit about where this came from. I interview artists from all over the world for Yale University Radio. So I've been doing this since 2016, and I've interviewed so far over 1,500 artists. That's a lot, right? Some of them are curators too. But when I interview artists, I'm asking them about their work, what they do, and many times about how they got the success they have. And I've interviewed artists in countries everywhere from the Middle East to Asia to Europe, Canada, U.S., Africa, just about everywhere on the planet. I've interviewed people, and the methods for success are really the same everywhere. You know, it seems remarkable. I often hear people saying to me, but I live in Israel and it's different here, or I live in Australia and it's different here. And it's really not so different everywhere. And I'll explain to you the method that one artist discussed who lives in Zambia. And he said the following. This was his three steps to success. Number one, get local recognition. So you start with a local recognition, meaning, shows in local galleries, local nonprofits, but you get local recognition. That can happen in many ways, but wherever you are, small town, small city, local recognition means applying to shows, talking to galleries, trying to get into galleries if you have to be in juried shows. I always suggest not to pay for anything. That's usually a sign that it's not a good step for recognition. So again, his first step was local recognition. That's getting into local galleries, applying to local nonprofits, awards, grants, anything that supports artists locally that you don't have to pay for, right? That's how you get recognition locally. And then his second step was find out who the biggest collector is in your city or town and try to get them to buy one of your works. So that's a really interesting and important second step. Find the biggest collector. Okay, so who are those big collectors? And how do you find out who they are? Well, oftentimes, if you're in a small city or town, you have a museum, right? And in your museum or nonprofit, there's theaters too, but let's take a museum, for example. They'll have collectors on their board, and they're listed on their website under, board of directors, trustees. These are local collectors that are big. You can also ask around, talk to different people, artists, galleries. Is there known collectors around here that are particularly big? Oftentimes you can just do a Google search for, art collector in Miami, art collector in, Fort Lauderdale, a specific town, city, art collector in, you know, wherever you are, Lusaka, Zambia, which was where he was. So it's easy enough to find who the collectors are. They're public. They make themselves known. They don't advertise themselves, but again, they're listed in museum boards of directors, which is a public directory, as well as trustees. And you can look around to find out who the collectors are. And by looking around, again, I mean talking to other artists, talking to galleries, talking to nonprofits. They know who the big collectors are, and there's usually just a handful in every town that are well known, that are visible. So, okay, step one is get local recognition. Step two is find out who the big collector is in your area and reach out to them. Try to get them to buy a work. Once you get them to buy a work, then you're on to step three, which is the international stage. He said after step one and two, then there's on to biennials and residencies and everything that's international. I think in some ways you can go from step one to step three, but I think step two is very important actually, and I really wanted to emphasize that today because finding a collector who can buy your work, who's not just any collector, but a prominent collector, is really important. That helps you with connections. That collector will show off your work likely. That collector will want to see your career grow. That's in their interest, right? So the three steps again to artistic success anywhere in the world is number one, local recognition, which is establish local recognition, which again is local galleries, local libraries, shops, restaurants, but local recognition so everybody knows you're an artist locally. That should be, the smaller task and easy enough to do, although of course it takes work. And involved in that should also be reaching out to galleries. So anything you can do to get recognized locally. If you paint murals, you can do that. But, again, exhibit any way you can locally so you're recognized as a local artist. The next step is step 2, find a prominent collector in your local area. Again, by researching through museums and also asking people, find out who the local collector is, or, there may be more than one, and then reach out to them directly. It's not hard to get their address. You can write to them through the museum if they're on the board of directors, but usually it's easy enough to Google their name and find their address. Write to them, find them, explain who you are and what you do, and ask them if they want to do a studio visit. You're trying to get a purchase of your work. That's step 2, purchase by a collector and a local collector, and one of significance. Again, that's on a museum board or as a trustee of a museum. This is who you want. That collector will then give you the confidence, but also the connections to reach out, because they want to see your career grow as well as much as you do. And the third step is the international stage, which means now that you have local recognition, a prominent collector buying your work, it's time to apply to biennials, it's time to apply to international residencies, it's time to apply to international shows everywhere. Again, not shows that cost money. Always big warning sign here, do not apply to shows that cost money to be in. They're not worth it. They're not selling your work, and they're not prestigious. Apply to shows and residencies and things that are that don't cost money to apply to, and you'll find may be valuable. So I hope that's helpful. Those are the 3 steps which I'm excited to share with you, and I think are a great way to launch your career globally. Again, just to summarize, step 1 is establish local recognition. Step 2, have a prominent local collector purchase your work. And step 3, start applying to things on the international stage, like biennials, major awards, residencies, and more. I hope this was helpful, and I wish you well with your art practice.